All right. I think it is good.
Microphone.
It says that we're live. Does anyone see that?
I see this live event will begin in a few moments.
Okay. That should be it. And what we'll do is let me pull it up here so I can just monitor the chat window. Yeah, I'm seeing it live right now. So we should be good there. And then we'll see if there's any chats happening. People are starting to populate on now. Can everyone see it though? Most importantly, can you see it on your end?
I see this live event will begin in a few moments.
Oh, okay.
That was my iPhone, so it's delayed, but I'm on.
Gotcha. All right. I'm gonna send you all the link because it's live over here. I'm seeing it live on my thingamajig. And I'll sit on the chat window. All right, so there you go. There should be there. What's up, Eddie?
What's up, buddy? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you. So I'll bring you up to speed really quick. Essentially, what we're going to do is we're going to have all of you jump off the call and then wait in the waiting room if you want to watch it on YouTube just as it's streaming to watch. And then I'll pull you on when it's time for your segment. And you're going to be one of the last ones with Matt talking about Zentensivism. Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
All right, so I'm going to ask you all just to leave the call and then re-enter. I'll keep you in the waiting room and we'll go from there.
So I re-enter immediately?
Yeah, you could just hang up, enter immediately, and then I'll pull you all in when it's time.
Sounds good.
And I'll start off for the first 5 minutes, just so you can watch it live. All right. What's up, Sham? We got everybody on here, and we're gonna give it a couple minutes and then get started. I'm going to be monitoring the chat window while we speak and hope everyone is doing well on this extremely hot and humid Monday. And if you're watching at home on the chat, give me a what's up. Let me know you're there. And it's always nice to say hello. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, now would be an excellent time to subscribe to this channel where you're going to get tons of education, stuff from the Critical Care Now website, but also stuff from me, crit bits, crit tips, crit dips. I haven't figured out the next crit something, but it's good to see you. We got Anna on here, or Anna. We got MJ in the house. And of course, we got Sean, who's one of the editors in chief for the platform. So it's really nice to see all of you. I'm trying to look up at the camera because that's the good etiquette to do when you're on a webinar, but the computer is right here as well. And we're going to get started in about 2 minutes. And again, just shout me out on the chat. Let me know who you are and say hello. We got Bedside Rounds up in here. The famous or infamous dude's on TikTok now. And it's always good to see him here virtually or in person. We had launch week this last week. This is we're in week 2 now of Critical Care Now, the website, and it's just been amazing. The feedback from the community, the FOMED community, has been very, very positive. People are liking the content, which I thought they would, but you don't know until you do the website how it's going to be. And I'm just lucky to have all these really smart, bright people be part of the community. So that's been great. All right, so Steve, who is part of Critical Care Now, is on the chat window, and you got Denise from Michigan. What up, Michigan is in the house. I feel like we got all the 4 corners of the country up in here. And for those who can't be here, you won't know until you watch it, but this is going to be recorded and played back on YouTube. We're going to be doing this, try to do it every week if possible, if not every 2 weeks. And we're going to create more of a show format, not so much just a Zoom call. We have content planned. We have some bits planned. We just want to keep this entertaining and educational as much as possible rather than just a Zoom call. Although there's nothing wrong with watching some people chat on Zoom. That's all right. And it's 5 o'clock, so it's time to start the Ivy League. So welcome, everyone. We got a whole bunch of people on the chat window. Even Portugal's in the house. All right. How do you say hello in Portuguese? Let me know. I'm always learning something new. But thank you all for popping in today. We have a really great show for you. We have some topical things and some education planned for this meeting as well. My name is Haney Malamat. I'm an educator and part of the criticalcarenow.com website that just launched last week to really fanfare, I have to say. The traffic to the website has been absolutely unbelievable. I thought a couple people would be here and there, and then over the next few months, we'd ramp up traffic. But I have to tell you, traffic has ramped up very, very fast. And I think that's no surprise, knowing that we have some really good educators who are on the platform. For those of you who don't know what Critical Care Now is all about, this was a website that I've been thinking about for a very long time. Those of you who know about the FOAM Ed movement or the free open access education movement know that there's a lot of great educators that are on there, but it's very hard when you're working on your own time to constantly generate content, and free content for that matter. So why not create a platform where lots of great educators can come together and create content collectively? And the goal of our website is to put at least one bit of content out per day, and every day has a different flavor. We have Monday, which is Airways and Vents, Tuesday, which is resuscitation, trauma, and cardiac arrest. Wednesday is the subspecialty days. It's sort of a potpourri of the subspecialty things that you would find in ICU, like nephro critical care, neurocritical care, those types of things. Thursday is our radiology and ultrasound day. Friday is back to basics, or the vitals, and that is geared more towards fellows and residents, but also junior attendings, where they can get content that is basic content, basic building blocks that would be important for practice. Our thought is you can't go talk about all this advanced critical care resuscitation stuff if you don't know the basics, and that's what that's for. Saturday is our tox, pharmacology, and procedure day, and Sunday is another subspecialty day. So we have a lot of editors, a lot of content, and our goal is to give you more and more every single day. And there's more stuff planned. Didn't want to throw it all out at once, but there are more channels that are developing. There's more content. We just want to get people familiar with the platform, and then we're going to go on from there. So really appreciate you check out the website. If you haven't seen it before, there's a subscribe button where you can subscribe to events and news that we have. We're a community, and we appreciate your support and you following along. So thank you for all those that have seen the website, and please check it out if you have not. So we're going to kick gears now. We're going to talk about something that's been a little topical, and I'm going to bring in some guests for that. I'm going to bring in Steve over here, and hopefully Evie Marcolini will jump in here. What's up, Steve? Check out the website if you haven't seen it before. There's a subscribe button where you can subscribe to events and news. Steve-o.
Hey, what's up, Haney?
What's up, man? How you doing?
And I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very good. I'm getting thirsty looking at your backdrop there.
I know, right? I'm working clinically in a couple of hours, so I'm not drinking.
Right.
You can just display it and still offend people. So
right on. So I'm going to bring Evie Marcolini in here. And Steve, why don't you tell us who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I'm Steve Haywood. I'm a emergency medicine physician in Akron, Ohio. I have an interest in critical care. My background before medical school, I was a respiratory therapist, did that for about 8 years, and then decided to become a doctor. I've done some online education. Haney's been a fantastic mentor and coach to kind of help bring that along. And so I'm really excited to join him on this project and interject some more med education.
Right on. And Evie, if anyone doesn't know who Evie is, then it's I don't know what I can do for you, but why don't you just go ahead and just the one person that doesn't know you, Evie.
I am fortunate enough to be on this. Thank you, Amy, for inviting me to this group. It's an amazing group. I'm really excited for what we're going to be doing. And I'm a neurointensivist and emergency physician. not in that order, emergency physician and neurointensivist. And I could not be more excited about this project.
Well, awesome. Thank you, Evie. Thanks for being here. And we're going to talk about something right now that's very topical, that has anyone that's been on social media for the past few days knows this is bananas. This went so uber viral. It's crazy. And we'll get into a little bit more why it's so crazy. But Steve, why don't you tell us what this thing is?
Yeah, so we've got the med bikini movement going on Twitter. It started with a journal article that was published in a vascular surgery journal. Some vascular surgeons got together. They made some ghost accounts, social media accounts, and then they used a registry of vascular surgeons who had recently graduated either fellowship or residency, and they tried to see who had open social media accounts that they could view. And the ones that had open social media accounts, they reviewed those to see if there was unprofessional behavior. And when you dive into their list of the things they listed as unprofessional behavior or potentially unprofessional behavior, that's really where the uproar started. Things as having pictures in swimwear on your social media accounts was considered unprofessional behavior. Profanities or even censored profanities on your social media account was considered unprofessional behavior. The consumption or even photos that had alcoholic beverages in them. I had my backdrop up, but it was really kind of wavy and fuzzy. But even the picture of an alcohol on your social media account really represented unprofessional behavior. A lot of the uproar seemed to be the homogenous nature of the authors and the editors who pushed this through. And a lot of the people, the subsect that were quite upset about it were some of our female colleagues who, again, weren't represented really in the authorship. And so now I have feelings about this. Obviously, I can't display my shorts. I got my Hawaiian swim trunks on today. I was gonna lose the shirt, but I've got the dad bod from 4 kids, so I decided to leave the shirt on. But anyway, things like this. I am a white, Southern, straight, cisgendered male. While I have opinions, a lot of times it's important in these topics for me to listen rather than to try to inject my opinion. So really, Avi, I'm really curious to what your thoughts are.
So let's start off, Steve, with the way that the study was structured. First of all, there was a woman on the authorship of the study, and I'm assuming that because the name was Erica, and that may be an assumption, but there was a woman on this study, and they separated people into categories. They separated these events into categories of potentially unprofessional content, clearly unprofessional content, and so they separated those categories. Now, the structure of first of all, I gotta show you. I'm showing alcohol.
Unprofessional.
Cheers.
I'm actually gonna
Cheers.
even. Steve, I know you're at work and you cannot do this.
I got my Dr. Pepper. I don't know. It's pretty unhealthy. This is causes obesity. This is what caused my dad bod. This might be unprofessional. I don't know, but you know what?
Cheers. So yeah, for the structure of this, actually what nobody on Twitter has mentioned is that this is not the first study of this sort. This is actually a study that was modeled exactly on 2 prior studies, one from Dartmouth and one from University of Nebraska. And they used those criteria that were used in prior studies. And so I have some issues with it, but let me just tell you my issues. First of all, when did holding an alcoholic drink become unprofessional? I defy anybody who was, writing this study or publishing this to show me a medical conference where there's no alcohol and where most of the work doesn't get done at the bar.
Evie, we're getting a little bit of microphone. I think it's, I don't know if it's coming from your end or.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you now.
Yeah. So conferences supply alcohol. I challenge you to show me a conference that is alcohol free, a medical conference. And secondly, if the general public is holding physicians to a higher standard, does this mean that they expect that we will not consume alcohol? And I'll say that the public, from all indications of them coming through the emergency department, expects that we're going to see the minor laceration before the stroke, to give them opiates for their urinary tract infections, to write for antibiotics against evidence. Since when do we use the general public to determine our standards? And finally, there's another study that was cited in these studies that shows that the public thought that the inappropriate things for social media postings by physicians was comments about patients, which absolutely HIPAA, and marijuana. But that study was done. It was a survey study done in 2014, which I think marijuana wasn't widely legal as it is now. So I don't think the public actually makes as big a deal out of this as the people who wrote this study do. Now, can I give you my complaints about this?
I'd love it.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
First of all, and I think I can be qualified to say this, how did this become a female thing? 68% of the people in this study were male, and there was no difference. And Haney, I think, Haney, you're wearing a mankini right now, aren't you?
Underneath, yeah.
I mean, there was no evidence in that study that only women were seen wearing beachwear or bikinis or whatever. I think sometimes we jump on the bandwagon a little too early. There's no evidence to show that this was geared toward women.
Well, I think one of the things that has been so widely spread on social media is that one of the criteria for unprofessional behavior were females in bikinis, but there was no equal criteria for males who were in swimwear.
I didn't see that in the study. Did you?
I believe it's one of the one of the criteria for the behaviors.
Well, if anybody's online to show me where it says females in bikinis, I looked hard for this because when I read the Twitter feed, I was thinking, wait a minute, did I miss something? Because I could have missed it, but
Steve, you were muted. Did you say something? Steve, we don't hear you. Steve. It's all that Dr. Pepper. All right, so Steve is working on that right now. Yeah, I mean, there you go. I got you.
I'm on my microphone again. I think I had microphone issues next week. I should really figure out my microphones. There was a comment about like photos in underwear, lingerie as well, which again, I think that, maybe some provocative, but there's a lot of fitness people that like to show their hard work they had. And while their, swimsuit may appear to be lingerie and things of that nature, I don't know, that may be more gender specific.
I agree with you, Steve, that I don't think we should be critiquing people based on wearing a swimsuit or whatever they wear on Twitter, on Facebook. But I guess most of what I read on Twitter in response to this was taking it to the Me Too and the female thing. I think this is equally offensive to men and women, and maybe more so offensive to men, because 68% of the folks that they looked at were male. So that's my only issue with this is let's critique this for what it is and not read into it.
That's fair. Yeah, it's one of the biggest things, because let's face it, the way I read it is as physicians, we're held to higher standards, so we must fit a standard, but that's such a subjective thing. That's someone else's standard. The thing I'm most concerned about, and this happens, we know it happens, that if you're going into medical school or residency, even though it's not said, I truly believe that you're being scouted on social media to see what this person's all about. And what that translates to me is that person who's subjective might see something on a social media profile that is interpreted, whether it's male or female, right? So we'll just take away the gender for a moment. And that person now has judged that person, and that person who's responsible for evaluating that candidate is potentially not seen as a valid candidate because of that one thing, because of something subjective. And this is a real problem or a real issue that we need to address as in education, or because clearly there are some very, very talented people who interpret their own image and their own look to be a safe look, but someone else who's subjectively looking at them sees it as unprofessional. So to me, it speaks to a bigger problem within healthcare. First of all, we were talking, and it's different generations, right? That this generation of physicians, nurses, healthcare folks are a different culture than the people who are doing the evaluation, and that's problematic, because who's to say that those people, because they have a tattoo sleeve or piercings or dressed in a bikini on social media with an alcohol beverage in their hand, isn't as qualified or more qualified than that same person when they were applying to school, just because of some impression.
Haney, I totally agree with you. And this caused me to look at the code of ethics from the AMA. And if you look at the code of ethics from AMA about social media postings, it all relates to patient privacy, confidentiality, boundaries of patient-physician relationship, and things like that. Nothing on that code of ethics says that we have to worry about holding a can of beer or something. And I think that, and interestingly, in this study, there were 0 HIPAA violations. I think that's well worth noting. And let's get real. There's even the study that I talked about before, where they asked patients, what bothers you? What bothered them was patient privacy, and appropriately so. So somebody monitoring what we wear and what we drink. And they said, and the other thing is, who's going to judge that somebody looks intoxicated? What does that mean?
Mm-hmm. It's a big issue that I'm glad the study came out in principle, only to investigate this as an antithetical way of the way they meant it. I think we have to take a deep look as people who are evaluating students and residents and even junior faculty join or senior faculty join jobs. We really need to take a deeper look at ourselves and ask, what are we really doing? We're supposed to be unbiased when we see patients in the clinical area. We're supposed to see people and not judge them when we take care of them. So why is it okay to do that for patients, yet judge someone who is a potential colleague of yours? It just doesn't, the whole thing don't jive, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Sorry, I cut out for a second. I froze up. Yeah, I completely agree. Really, the spot that I felt, I think everybody had something they felt personally attacked from, but they said any display of controversial religious beliefs. Well, what is a controversial religious belief? Is it a different one from what you hold? And I come from a very religious background. And most of my family members, a lot of what they post is religious things. So now that's something that people hold sacred to themselves. In order to be professional, I have to hide that, and it's, I think the list is so exhaustive. Pretty much everybody had something on that list that they were proud of and that they wanted to advocate for and put out there. And it's just, the fact that it can be construed by some as unprofessional, or like I say, it is an eye-opening paper that that bias still exists.
Steve, I'm glad you brought that up, because it brings up the issue of suggesting that we can't post anything about our political beliefs or our religious beliefs. And this harkens back to the stay in your lane business that you guys remember. And please don't take me there, because there's nobody who's going to say that we cannot post what we believe about firearm injury reduction. And if I want to post something about my religious beliefs, or you want to post something about your religious beliefs, we should be able to do that, and that we should not be judged for that. That now we're getting into free speech. And
Absolutely.
and the conversation about what's free speech, what's hate speech. I agree with you there. That's really Big Brother, and I can't agree more. That's BS.
Absolutely. Yeah, we need to be actively involved in political policies because a lot of them very much affect the public health of our nation, and trying to limit that. I love Megan Rainey when she talks about taking a public health approach to gun violence, taking a public health approach to a lot of these political issues. And when we do that, and we don't take it as a Republican, Democrat policy, we just let's do what's best for the public health. We need to be involved in those, and we don't need to be afraid of, is this potentially unprofessional, me advocating for the health of the general public?
Right.
I completely agree.
Well said. Well, Evie, Steve, thank you so much. It's a topic that we could go on for a very long time, and perhaps should at a different time, because there's lots of social and human issues in here that definitely need to be highlighted. So to that, cheers. I forgot my drink downstairs.
Cheers.
Thanks for popping on, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
See you guys. Thanks, Haney.
Right. Thanks. So I'm gonna bring on two more folks here to talk a little bit about. Oh my goodness! All right, we're gonna talk a little bit about something that was posted this last week on Critical Care Now, and that is the COVID airway. So for that, I'm going to bring on Mohammed and Harmon, and I'm going to let you guys introduce yourselves, let the people know who you are. But these are two of the editors for Critical Care Now. So go ahead and introduce yourselves.
All right. Thanks for having me, Haney. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, we got you.
All right, cool. Hey, guys. So I'm Harmon, and it's my pleasure to be on this platform. Thank you, Haney, for giving me the opportunity. I'm a emergency physician, mentee of one great Evie Marcolini, who you just heard from, and also a practitioner in the medical ICU here at Dartmouth-Hitchcock. I am an editor on the procedure day, aka day 6, the best day of the week. And thanks for having me. And I'm glad to talk with my colleague Mo here about a recent post of ours.
Mo, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. I'm sorry I forgot my bikini suit here. Just got this plain, boring shirt. My name is Mohammed Hagamed. I'm one of the attending emergency medicine physicians here at UT Health San Antonio. I am involved with residency and MITS student education, as well as the editor for the trauma resuscitation day 2. Best day ever.
Game on.
I knew that was going to come up at some point.
Right, that's right.
And Mo is in the middle of the pandemic. You know, many people on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, got hit really hard up front a few weeks ago, and we kind of came out of it. And as you know, now it's in Texas and is being hit hard by it. So it's topical that we talk about this COVID airway, which was Harmon's post from this last Saturday, which was intimating the COVID airway. Harmon, do you want to give us like the bullet points from that post? And people should definitely read the whole thing, but let's hear.
Yeah, no, and I think if there's one point that I can leave everyone with here is, you all have institutional challenges to approaching the COVID patient and certainly the COVID airway. We know that airway is a definite, hands down, evidence-based aerosol generating procedure, but I'm sure, as Mo will soon tell us, like the challenge is there when you're getting killed in San Antonio, and please, brother, be safe. It's quite different to, here in the Upper Valley, where thank God we're not seeing that surge that you guys are. So it started all with, us just understanding what are our institutional challenges and what are our institutional issues, where are the holes, where are the gaps, what do we do well, what do we not do well, and address that. So it started by taking a look at what we do. And earlier on, I mean, I'm going back to like March, the institution was very supportive. Even our department was very supportive of giving us the right PPE, giving us the right resources, us telling them we need portable video handles and getting it all for us. But essentially the sort of 3 things we really figured out is where in the ED are you going to do this? And that of course covers this notion of how close are your respiratory units or respiratory rooms, the negative pressure rooms, to your PPE closet, to EMS entry hallways, and that sort of geographical organization. The second thing is sort of having all your airway tools and things that you need, but having it available in a portable fashion. So we made an airway bag that I show in my post, and you can look in details of what's in there. So that, you know, if intubation does happen somewhere else, you can still adhere the same standard of PPE, same equipment standard, to provide the best care possible for the patient. And lastly, since this is unprecedented time, there's not a, you know, R01 study and a randomized controlled trial on how you take care of a COVID ER patient in the middle of a pandemic, right? So we had to practice. And so we did in situ simulations after we sort of disseminated our protocol. And that was really, really successful in not just disseminating the information, but also really getting to know what the challenges are within your own sort of local in vivo team, and fixing it and tweaking it.
Great. Mohammed, any comments on that?
No, I fully agree with Harman. I think definitely preparation is key, and setting the protocols out there. We were, like Harman, very fortunately prepared before this, as we witnessed what was happening in New York and upper state, that, you know, those affected states in the beginning of the pandemic. So we were prepared. We had an assigned team, an assigned checklist for difficult airways. I think initially a problem probably was we were intubating people very quickly, so we were like just rushing to intubate quickly. And now, from our level of understanding, is that, hey, you know what, maybe these folks benefit greatly, you know, from proning and trying to do things in the ED without that reflexive intubation. So we have a checklist, we have an idea of who's going to be in the room. And like Carmen was saying, we also have equipments that are disposable equipments, you know, in terms of medications, resuscitation medication, and also the airway equipment also at bedside. So, you know, if, you know, we, like just 2 days ago, I saw a patient that was decompensating quickly, and we knew that they needed an airway. So at that time, we just activated what I just told the charge nurse, we need to activate the COVID airway team, and just is going to be involving myself, a nurse who was also experienced, and the RT. And then we had all the equipment ready at bedside. We went in full PPE and full masked up and everything else. And we did it in a very controlled fashion. And, you know, it's always nice just to have that comforting silence in a room, right? When nobody speaks, when nobody knows what they're doing. That's like the beauty, I guess is the art of resuscitation. And it was just beautiful. Everybody knew what they were doing. We had the VL, no complications. Obviously, that doesn't happen like this all of the time. You know, we all have bad days and those full moon days, you know, as we all experience. I think what we have been experiencing recently is those difficult situations with morbidly obese folks. So the BMIs that are 40s, 50s, what to do with them. So we've been especially careful with them. So we've been like trying to hold on as long as possible before trying to intubate them. And obviously you want to intubate them also in a non-emergent way, in a non-crashing way. However, we learned from our experience here in San Antonio that these morbidly obese folks don't end up doing well on a ventilator. So they end up actually staying in the ICU for a long time, and a lot of them end up having a bad outcome. So we've been very careful with those ones as we continue to have a large volume in AD and keeping them longer in AD.
And when you say PPE, are you doing PAPR or N95 shield? What, I know different places are doing different things, and then I can tell you, because we were early on, we did something very different that we're adapting to. But what are you folks using right now?
Go ahead, Mo.
So we have a respirator.
Mm-hmm.
So all the attending physician have a respirator. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
So we have there's a slight caveat to this. And so, you know, the hospital up to very recently, and certainly when things started, had this dedicated sort of hospital-wide COVID team. And, you know, that sort of became you know, in many realms, it was challenging the traditional, like, you know, why does someone outside the ER come to the ER to do my airway, right? All those things that we know about. But, you know, PPE was no different, right? There was at the start, PPE was a very markedly valued resource. And what PPE do you use? Do you recycle PPE? Absolutely the right issues. Thankfully, you know, through the institution's own sort of investment into it and attention to it, we have not had that, at least I'm aware of, in the ER or in the ICU, a situation where we've had an issue with PAPRs. and we use PAPRs all throughout. So, obviously there's universal PPE, which is level 2 mask and shield and all that. But for an airway, either assessment of an airway, getting an endotracheal aspirate, or actual acts of intubation and bronchoscopy, it's full like PAPR. And if people can wear a surgical mask, a level 2 surgical mask underneath it if they want to, but we even have the sort of drape, the apron that goes around the neck and the chest. But I think most people definitely for if you're intubating, you're wearing a PAPR, regardless of whether you have, but
a handsome beard.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah. The other thing that was interesting, because again, when we first started the pandemic, and I don't want to seem like, when I did the pandemic, but we were hit when we knew nothing. We knew that, poop was hitting the fan, that things are going down. No one knew anything about this virus. So we went in PAPR. We did all the things that we're pretty much still doing now, but there was a level of, we still don't know if it's enough because we just didn't have the data.
100%, because, like part of the motivation for this post is, like I said, earlier on, there was a COVID airway team, right? But then we very quickly we have 5 people in our EMCC division, and we were like, well, what if there's a situation where they're in the MICU and we have an airway in the ED, right?
Right.
And so we wanted to have sort of a parallel setup, and that became a PPE issue as well. And I remember earlier on, things were one way, and more recently, people have talked about, well, so if you're in this, like, we have this cohort area geographically in our ED. So if you're just going from one COVID positive to another COVID positive, or one COVID suspect to another COVID suspect, and I know the positive and suspect issue becomes an issue, but like, is there a portion of your PPE that you can reuse? And I can tell you there is no good answer, and it's markedly contentious. And even within our ED, like 2 providers may not feel the same as the other 2 providers.
Sure. Yeah, and we're still learning more, but we know a lot more now, a few months into it, than we did before. For example, one of the things that was a big deal was these airway boxes. There were people like initially saying, and they made a good case for it, to have this big plexiglass box, and then you could show fluorescent spray, and it's like, look, this just makes sense. But then when the rubber hits the road and people are doing airways in this airway box, they're saying, look, we're making a procedure that's already difficult at times to do even harder. And is that a good thing for our patients? And clearly the answer turns out to be no. It clearly turns out to be doing the things that you're talking about and you did during your post, having an action plan, having a coordinated team, going in there with a purpose and doing the things that you know how to do, but do them carefully, appears to be just as good as doing it with all these drapes and everything, which again, I'm not laughing at being like, that's so stupid. At the time, that's all we knew, and we thought it was the right thing because we just didn't know much about it. And as time goes on, we're just learning more and more. So it's interesting to see, because for me, this is the first time I've ever lived through something where we're learning science. For my mentors, they tell me this is how the AIDS pandemic was, where people didn't know at first, and you're learning science as you go. Every day, every week is a new article. So it's a very interesting time to be part of this all. And who knows in 3 months from now whether or not we'll just go in there and be like, N95 and a face shield. And I'm not saying to do that by any means. I'm just saying that who knows what it'll be. But as we learn more, that's the beautiful thing about what we do, is that we're constantly adjusting and refocusing for better practice for us and our patients.
I just wanted to add one point. No, this is a great point. From my recent experiences here, as we see a lot of crashing patients, and I'll be fully honest with you. Now we've been trying to initiate more family discussion. And I know this is like, this is not what we do in emergency medicine. We see someone that is dying. Let's go save this soul. Let's do it, rushing in to do it. Now, when we see a patient that is clearly not going to do well, and clearly is not going to survive this episode, we've been trying to get them, the care that they need now without rushing to put that tube in. Let's say keep them comfortable in the BiPAP until we find out what the goals of care are. So I have recently had multiple family discussion with the phone. They say, you know what, this patient already has all of these issues. They're not going to survive this. I think this is the right thing to do for my loved one, and I don't want to do this for them. And I know sometimes it can be difficult to do this in a very emergent setting, but I have found myself frequently stopping myself and see, you know what, can this patient just hang in there with that high flow nasal cannula until I speak to the family and tell them exactly what we're doing. So something that maybe your audience need to be aware of and cognizant of as we continue to see more of these patients like storm our EDs and ICUs.
Absolutely, Mo. Like I can, both the EM doctor and the intensivist out in me, like, props to you, because, especially add on to the fact that, like, in our shop, like, resources, we don't have a 1,000-bed hospital, right? Like, it's almost like a bed that I could have should have avoided to schmo can benefit, to someone who probably stands a better chance. And I know that's a very large, steep, ugly ethical slope, and that's a conversation for a different time. But some of the metrics of resuscitation, like you used the Q word earlier. It's amazing how many things that we've all learned to say in the simulation world, I found myself saying in the clinical world. Like, hey, you have 5 minutes. Go get your PPE on, get ready, do the checklist, get not just your brain in the right place, but the RT, the nurse, everyone in the room in the right place before you enter the damn room, before you touch the patient. Right? And that's a very quintessentially non-emergency medicine thing to do. We're like, it's an airway, let's get excited, let's go, let's do and act, right? And instead, you actually get a quiet room, you get 5 minutes, and you realize just standing there and sometimes doing nothing tells you so much about the patient. Like this person is deeply hypoxemic, their SAT is 60, yet they're texting, they're talking to you. And perhaps I don't need to do some of the things that I did with, a flu A positive person who's 60 years old and has a SAT 60. That's a completely different patient that I'm looking at in the COVID pandemic than I was in the influenza pandemic. Yeah. And then, Haney, to your point about like the technology, right? I mean, and the boxes and things that have come and gone. Like, I can't tell you how many times in our in situ simulations they were like, so I heard about this, let's try this. And the box, the drape, the this and that. And it's good to just like sort of people bring it up, we talk about it, and almost have like a internal evidence burden, like our own practice pattern, which is in a sense to me, customized patient care as opposed to not. And that's just, to me, that's just been a very heartening thing about this pandemic.
Yeah, it's really been, if there's any silver lining, and there's been some, but the fact that we have the social media community to be able to communicate, the ability to rapidly implement studies and disseminate information. If this had happened during, the early 1900s, I think it would have been a lot worse. And so this is definitely a terrible thing we're going through and tragic on many levels, but I also think it could have been worse had we not had access to this technology. So, I appreciate both of you coming on and talk about the COVID airway. Definitely check out the post, Harman's post from last week. It's a really nice video summary sheet and also infographic on all the things you need to do. And there's going to be some more COVID posts moving forward. And I know we'll hear back from both of you in the coming weeks. So thanks for being on.
Thanks for having me. Be safe, Mo.
You too, buddy.
Be safe.
Bye.
All right. So we're going to bring on our next guest here. And this is going to be Matt Schuba, who, let's just get Matt on here, whose post today on PRVC was just a phenomenal post. And here he comes. What's up, Matt? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Cool. So I was just introducing you and said that today your post was just banging and retweeted and downloaded and shared on Instagram, just all over the place. And we're talking about pressure regulated volume control, which is a mode that many places use and sometimes have different names, but it always mystifies people. But before I go on, why don't you just let us know a little bit about who you are and tell us about PRVC?
Sure. So my name is Matt Schuba. I'm a medical intensivist at the Cleveland Clinic in Ohio, and I'm especially interested in mechanical ventilation, amongst other things. So the PRVC post was inspired by the fact that I think a lot of people don't know what PRVC actually is. And there's other modes that are similar on other ventilators that have the same problem. So PRVC and modes like it are what's called adaptive modes of pressure control, which means you set a tidal volume, which sounds confusing because this is a pressure mode, but the ventilator delivers the breath in a pressure control fashion, and it decides how much pressure to give based on the mechanics of the lung and then how much effort the patient is giving. So basically, if the patient is giving no effort, the machine's going to do the majority of the work to get you the whatever tidal volume you set. But let's say you start waking up and you start doing more work, then the machine's pressure delivered will be less. So and that way it's adaptive. So it's called pressure regulated volume control, or VC plus on another ventilator, or adaptive pressure ventilation on yet another ventilator. But all it is saying, I'm going to try to achieve a tidal volume by changing how much pressure I give in each breath.
And what's your sense of why it's become such a popular mode of ventilation? Because, we'll get into a little bit the nuts and bolts about why it might not be a good mode of ventilation for certain patients, but why do you think it's been so overwhelmingly popular?
The main advantage that it has is in a world that where we care about tight control of tidal volume, which is definitely something that's beneficial, or at least making sure we don't have exceedingly high tidal volumes. It still is a pressure control mode, which means the patient controls their flow, which is the part that's really most important from a comfort standpoint. So if you want to draw a breath at whatever speed and vigor that you want, and volume control, you can't do that. The machine's going to give you whatever set flow we gave you. But in this mode, you have the ability to be able to have a say about your flow. And then, like I said, the machine will adjust to your effort to try to deliver the rest of the breath. So that's kind of like the nicest advantage to it. So on somebody that's like not terribly critically ill, is on a ventilator, let's say waking up from anesthesia or waking up after a polysubstance overdose, you just need them to sort of wake up, start to do the work on their own. It's a really nice choice.
Yeah. I also think, or I find my observation is that therapists like it because it allows just time away from the ventilator. Not that they don't want to be there's busy units and they got things to do. So you're not constantly watching the ventilator and making adjustments. It does allow a little bit of autonomy to the ventilator, which is a nice thing. And closed loop ventilation, I believe, will be the future of all ventilation, where why wouldn't you if you have microprocessors and artificial intelligence doing this? But I believe that's also one of the reasons why it's preferred. But what are some of the situations that you see where it's inappropriately used, or what should be some evidence to people who are at the bedside as evidence that this is a failing mode for that patient and they should consider changing?
Yeah, that's a great question. The best example that you could think of is, we're talking about the more work a patient's doing, the less support the ventilator is going to give. And there are situations in which that's beneficial. That's not beneficial in somebody that has a really, really high respiratory drive, let's say from metabolic acidosis, or from some other reason. Think about like if a DKA patient got intubated, or somebody with a really bad acute kidney injury and metabolic acidosis gets intubated, their desired minute ventilation is going to be really, really high. So they will achieve whatever that tidal volume that you set for them is, but it may mean as if their drive is up here, the ventilator pressure is going to be down here. And in some cases it'll be zero. So basically like having somebody on CPAP, which can really be detrimental. You can divert 20 to 25% of your total blood flow to your respiratory muscles when you have that kind of drive. And you're talking about maybe worsening shock and definitely under supporting the patient. So a clue that might be happening is if you're looking at your pressure control, your pressure waveforms, you start to see the pressure, inspiratory pressure getting lower and lower with each breath. And eventually it'll be zero, it'll be scooped out. You know that patient's under supported or unsupported. So then you lose any advantage of having it. And you have to think about either changing modes or changing sedation or doing something different to help that patient.
Yeah, there's just clearly some patients who, when we mechanically ventilate them, they just need a break. They need to be sedated deeply, good analgesia, and let them ride the ventilator until they have enough cardiac output to allocate. For me, one of the ones is, someone who's in a really bad ARDS, or like you said, bad shock. It's like putting them and allowing them to adapt is not the time. They need to be sedated, recover a little bit, and then you start easing it back. To me, PRVC, and you might even give me a funny look when I say this, but I think of it as really cruise control mode. When you get on the highway, you have a lot of maneuvers to do to get on that main highway. You got to make sure that you're merging correctly, adjust your speed. There's a lot of things to do. Putting them in a cruise control mode is not the appropriate time when you're just getting on. I see it as, you fix the problem. They're getting to that plateau phase of their resuscitation or even de-resuscitation. And now you're giving control back. And this is when you're starting to wean them from the vent. Not using it as a weaning mode, but they're at the point now where they're used to the ventilator. Their hemodynamics have adjusted a bit. Their oxygenation's possibly a little bit better. And that's the way I personally see it, but your thoughts, and it's okay to disagree with me.
I know. I think that's a great way to look at it. In the video, we talk about sort of the three goals of mechanical ventilation, being safety, comfort, and liberation. And all those goals are always important, but at different points, different things predominate. So at the beginning, you're talking about somebody needs rest or somebody needs lung protection. They just need to be kept safe. They need to be sedated or whatever you need to do to keep them safe. PRVC is probably not the right mode for that patient. But yeah, it gets to be day 2, day 3. Things are starting to turn around. You want to let them be a little bit more liberal on the vent. You want to try to get their sedation off. You want to do things that actually make a difference, like doing SATs and SBTs and trying to keep them off of sedating medicines. That's a great time to use it. You'll also be able to start seeing how much work they're actually doing for themselves by how that pressure curve is changing. So it's not a weaning mode per se, but it does allow you to maybe identify people who will be ready to wean.
That's a really good way of saying it. You put them in that mode, and people that can tolerate it well, that's the person that you're going to start thinking about the next steps for it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. The post is fantastic. You had Steve Haywood try to video bomb you in the middle of the video. But in all seriousness, this is a really great video and something that I'm going to use for all the residents and the fellows for this mode that initially is hard to wrap your brain around. It's everywhere, but people sort of say, yeah, PRVC. But then when you ask them what it is, they're really not sure. But for me, this is the video that I'm going to give them to learn. And it's a quick watch, but chock full of so much information. So, and also the associated infographics. So thanks for that, man. That was great.
Oh yeah, sure. My pleasure.
Yeah. And on that note, I'm going to bring in Eddie Joe, who is going to be talking about, he's going to be talking about something that you're passionate about. You both share this passion. It's called Zentensivism. What's up, Eddie?
What's up? Can you hear me okay?
We got you there. I think you have to lower the, someone's giving feedback on their YouTube channel or something.
Check now. Do I still have interference?
Yeah, you're good. You're good, man. Eddie, for those of you, there may be someone out there who doesn't know who you are, believe it or not. Why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Matt doesn't know who I am. So. But my name is Eddie Joe. Actually, my name is Eddie Gutierrez. The Gutierrez is a little, I think Shuba is easier and Melmet is easier to say than Gutierrez.
It's not Gutierrez, it's Gutierrez.
Gutierrez, tú sabes. By the way, I brought the booze.
Oh my God, double fisting.
Yeah, I mean, he said it was going to be like happy hour time, so here we are. I mean, I'm not going to take off my shirt because, well,
Yeah, there is a certain rating here. We don't want to get flagged.
Yeah. No, I know. But I would have covered the nips. So
fair enough. Next show, Eddie. Next show.
All right.
Where are you located? You don't have to say the hospital, obviously, but where are you located?
I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, right now.
Are there any COVID patients down in Jacksonville, Florida?
There's like 1 or 2.
Okay, yeah.
So when it was the beginning of the pandemic and all that, I felt like I had the survivorship guilt in the sense that I didn't have that patient load that people had. Like, for example, what you were going through in Cooper, other folks who were in Seattle, other folks in New York, etc. And I was here like twiddling my thumbs. So I was like, okay, I got like my patients, whatever. But no, I can say I have a good amount of experience.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because I remember talking to you, and in the back of my head, I was really just hoping. I was like, I hope no one. Everyone's preparing, everyone's getting ready. Everyone, of course, wants to help. And some people even got on a plane and flew into places. Other places, they said, stay back, get ready, because we're going to get hit. I thought, and we're not going to get political or anything, but I really thought that after seeing New York and New Jersey, people would be like, oh, damn, we better make sure that this doesn't happen to us. And I was hoping that that would be the case. For this or that reason, that hasn't happened, and unfortunately, it's a bit off control. But if there's anyone who really should be taking care of patients at the bedside, it's Eddie, who's a super smart dude, and his blog eddiejoemd.com, and all the stuff he does on Instagram. So I'm sorry that you're going through it, but again, if there's anyone equipped to do it, it's you.
You know, but at the end of the day, the whole purpose is we haven't exceeded that curve. So we have the resources to take care of these people. Unfortunately, yeah, we have more patients than before. But like, you know, I'm on a team where I can be called in at any point, and I'm not being called in. I'm here hanging out with you, holding two bottles of bourbon.
Yeah, maybe you don't want to hold the bottles in case they're looking and be like, Eddie, actually stay home right now.
then you could report me on that article for improper behavior. For now, no, we're good.
Well, let's talk about the Zentensivism thing, because I think that this is something that many intensivists do, but there hasn't been a term associated with it, and it's just such a perfect term. Matt, do you want to tell us what it is? Because you're one of the first people I think that was publicly waving the Zentensivism flag that I know of. Oh, and there he goes. All right, he'll probably pop back on. Eddie, you want to talk a little bit about it then?
Sure, but basically what Matt had written, and it's funny because I'm not as vocal on the Twitter sphere, but I do go and browse and look around and whatnot. And I had run into that term of Zentensivism, and I thought it was a very interesting term because it's kind of how I practice. I typically try to be a minimalist in life, obviously not with 2 bottles of bourbon.
No, that's the extreme.
Yeah, but in other things, I try to be a minimalist and try to practice kind of in a laid back fashion where I put the main focus on the patient and try not to do any unnecessary interventions on them, just the bare minimum to give them the best comfort. And I think I might have lost you.
No, I got you still.
Oh, okay. I just lost you on the screen.
Okay.
But basically I had seen this term of Zentensivist going around the Twitter sphere, and I was pretty intrigued by it. And then I went ahead and I saw this article that was published with Matt being the lead author in the ATS. I think it's the Scholar one, not the Blue Journal one, but nonetheless. And I went ahead and I read it, and it really struck a chord with me because it just so happens to be the way that I practice.
Yeah, Matt, we're just before you popped off, we were talking about this term that, until honestly, you were the first person I know of that put the term on there. But it's something I think that many people do. It's the minimalist practice. I sort of see that there are people who are the intensivists who do every fine tuning and they tweak everything. It's like, oh, the person's urine output was we're like 2 cc's negative today, so let's be sure we bolus them with 2 cc's of normal saline. We got to keep them even. And then there are people that are like, the body is wise. We just let it heal. So Matt, tell us, obviously we know what camp you're in, but where did this term come from, and did you invent it?
Yeah, good question. So I'm going to take half credit for it, and I'll tell you how it came about. So what happened was a little over a year ago, we were having a conversation about what works and what doesn't work in critical care. And the people who are more senior than me were kind of voicing the opinion that, all we're learning is it's probably better to do less to people because all the interventions we ever study don't seem to work. So somebody said, well, this must be the age of the lazy intensivist. And I said, let's call it the Zen intensivist. And then Josh Farkas took the two and crammed them together. And then since then, him and I have been using the term, and then kind of it kind of took off and other people started using it. And then finally, Augie Gadzik, who is the senior author on our paper, said, why don't we write about this? Because there's definitely strikes a chord with people. So that's how we came to it. So it kind of started in a way of thinking like, we have to kind of have some humility about the fact that a lot of the stuff we do is not that helpful. And that allows us to step back, focus on the big picture, look at the patient, focus on the things that are going to point them in the right direction, not worry if the potassium is 3.1, thinking about what's going on with this human and how can I help point them in the right direction. And if I can't point them in the right direction, being honest about it and making sure that they have some comfort and dignity throughout the process.
Yeah, it's what I've ascribed to, the way I handle it. But what I'll ask you both is, do you ever get the feeling when you practice that way that you're with people who are not Zentensivists, who are like, this dude just don't care?
Yeah, yeah, that is a common issue. That's a good plug actually for the talk that I'm going to give about this on Wednesday at Hospitalists and Resuscitationists. If you want to join that, because I kind of get into that issue a little bit. And the defining line is, it's not that the nurse rushes to you and says this patient's unstable, and I say, okay, let me finish my coffee and I'll think about if I'm going to do something about it. It's more like, that's a time critical intervention and I'm going to act on it. But then as soon as I'm done fixing that problem, I'm going to get out of their way, because then I'm going to start tinkering with things and trying to perfect things and pushing things to normal that probably shouldn't be normal. And I think I'm going to make everything worse. So yeah, if you're with people that have more of an interventionist tendency, you have to do a lot of explaining. But fortunately, most people tend to get it pretty quickly, even if they don't adopt the style, they at least understand it.
Yeah. What do you think, Eddie?
Well, I think it might be the opposite in some cases. For example, when you're dealing with like compassion for the patient, yes, you might not be going and doing all these aggressive things, but at the same time, your nursing staff as well as your colleagues recognize how important it is that time that one designates to the patient themselves as well as their family members in this troubling time that they're going through. And so it's not, as Matt was saying, it's not necessarily that you're going to take your coffee instead, but also you're going to spend a little bit more time with the patient directly, speaking to their family as to why you're not doing X, Y, or Z intervention, why you're not intubating them, why you're not placing the central line, and focusing more on the compassionate side of critical care medicine and focusing more on, the humanity of it all.
It's also, go ahead, Matt.
I was going to say that's a great point. I think that summarizes it really well. To piggyback on that, I would just say to do less to people actually is more work. It takes more observation, it takes more diligence, and it takes more explaining to people the thought process. So it's actually harder. You'd think it would be easier, but it's the only reason that, if you don't intrinsically believe that this is the right thing to do, then at least hopefully the ethical obligation would make you feel like that's where you need to be focused.
I would argue it's much harder, and you both have said it in so many words, but it requires more explanation so that the bedside nurse, the family, they don't see that you are a lack of caring. So it almost requires more demonstration at the bedside, especially when someone doesn't know who you are and what your practice is. Maybe it's a new nurse, maybe you're new to the ICU. It's a new family who doesn't know who you are, and they had the most amazing intensivist last week who happened to micromanage everything, and now you're coming on service and they're like, last week they gave potassium for the 3.9 and I don't understand what you're doing. So this concept of stand there, don't just do something requires a lot more deliberate thought on your own time, but also to exemplify to almost demonstratively show people around you that you are thinking about it, and then the reasons why. And I almost find, there are some, we'll just say, mature or seasoned intensivists who are micromanagers, but I almost see that it happens to be something that if you are a micromanager, if there is that cohort, they start off their career that way, and then maybe they get a little more moderate, or they cross all the way over to Zentensivism. It's very rare to see someone who just starts out, unless they had some mentors that were like that. And sometimes almost when I see the fellows who are Zentensivists, I almost have to stop and ask them, it's like, you should be caring a little bit more. Like you are not ready to be a Zen master just yet.
Well, let me interrupt right here. I'm not a Zentensivist entirely just yet. I'm still in the migratory phase, and I will admit wholeheartedly, actually, one of my most popular tweets was when COVID started, and I had my first airway with COVID. I made the decision to go ahead, and as soon as I intubate somebody, I go ahead and put the central line in the A line. And it was more and these are unnecessary procedures, one would think, but at the same time, I was trying to think ahead of needs that the patient might have, and to save PPE and to save time for like the next shift. I didn't want to leave it onto the night guide. I have to go ahead and do these procedures. So I can't say I'm a full Zentensivist. I also still like my euboxemic patients every now and then. At least I got a protocol for that,
Well, first of all, Eddie will always jump at the opportunity to point out that I'm older than him and that he's young. So that's the first thing I want to comment on. And the second is that euboxia term, which is a phenomenal term. I think it was, I'm going to say Chris Nixon is the creator of it, but even if it's not, he did a wonderful lecture that you can find somewhere on YouTube from SMAC called Euboxia, or Managing Euboxia, which basically says that a very seasoned intensivist, not Zentensivism or whatever, but a seasoned intensivist knows that putting people into boxes or numbers isn't the way to treat every patient. But sometimes for patients where you don't really know what's going on, it might be the thing to do, to Eddie's point.
It makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Doesn't it? Just have those boxes filled. Matt, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so I think to both of your points, that you guys made really important points. To Haney's point, yeah, you really can't be a Zentensivist unless you're unless you have clinical mastery, because otherwise you're just ignoring things that shouldn't be ignored. So that's on the one hand. So there's a lot of things. I think a lot of people, if you ask people that work with me, they'd actually find me to be very proactive, or kind of jump on things when they happen if they need to. But yeah, that there's a difference there. Like it's a benign neglect. It's not an ignorant neglect. And then to get to Eddie's point, and a large part of this is too, in terms of clinical mastery and being as intensive as understanding disease trajectory, and how many of those COVID patients end up hypotensive on compressors within 2 hours of being intubated. So that's, I would argue that's not Zentensivist to do that. I mean, this is like understanding where these people are going and trying to anticipate badness. But it also, that's the appropriate use of let's go ahead and do this because we think something bad's going to happen. That's different than every patient that comes to the ICU needs a line, or every patient that comes to the ICU needs a CTPE and an ACS rule out. Yeah. So there's definitely, it's all about titrating your practice appropriately. And, I know I don't need to tell you guys, but that's just for the listeners, because I feel a lot of people think that there isn't like maybe a malignant type of nihilism that comes with Zentensivism, and it's quite the opposite.
I just want to say that this is probably, of all the segments we did today, the one that we could make the most bumper stickers and T-shirts out of. I mean, what did you just say? What was the last? What was that last thing that you just said? It was I should have written it down. It was so good. But there's just so many like good. There's so many little good adjectives that come out of there. But it's all true. I mean, all jokes aside, it requires seasoning. It requires time of training. It requires to know what the anticipated result will be of you not doing something versus you doing something. You giving the 500 cc bolus for the person who has low urine output when you're called at 3 o'clock in the morning, that's not going to lead to anything. That just makes you fill that box that you responded appropriately. However, the person who is, whose ionized calcium is low, that is something that you should address, because there's things that come with that. And that takes time, and that takes, it's not even just observing people, it's actually clinically practicing for several years. Yes, Eddie, several years of practice.
Hey, it's already several years for me. In 2 days, it's gonna be 3 years that I've been out. So, but one other thing I wanted to mention that I took away from the article is, these our partners and our colleagues who run into codes and, emergent situations, guns blazing, yelling, just knocking everybody out of their state of flow because they're so boisterous. That's something that I've been trying to fight my whole career. And it's one of those things that just drives me crazy whenever I see it. I'm like, that's why I just turn around and I go the other direction, because I don't want to be in that room anymore.
I mean, the thought for me on that is actually two different points. Like when I see people like that, I get it. It's they're uncomfortable because they don't know what to do next. So that's usually what makes a room noisy. And that's not the same thing as people who are not Zentensivists or the classic, like the person who's doing stuff they know what they're doing. It's just that the way that they manage patients is to do everything and hope by correcting all the derangements, things will fall into place, versus intensivism, which is understanding that there are things that you could do, but you're going to focus on the things that you should do, and everything else will come into play. But it's a beautiful concept, and it's one that I was so happy when I saw that there was a term associated with it. And I'm glad we brought it to light, mostly because I want people out there to understand when they see people practicing that way, it's their mindset. Like maybe look a little harder at that person. Don't discount them as being like, oh, that person doesn't care because they're not doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Any closing
Absolutely.
thoughts, gentlemen, on that?
No, just real quick. It's always fun to be on these. Nice to meet you, Matt.
You too.
So I'm a fan of your work for many months now. And Haney, always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for being on. But for both of you and everyone else that joined today, this is a really fun format, and hopefully we could do these weekly and get different parts of the Critical Care Now team on board. And moving forward, we'll have some more stuff planned. So I'm looking forward to it. Just so everyone knows, both of these gentlemen, as well as the other faculty who are on here today, are going to be part of Resus X, which is coming up October 6th, 7th, and 8th, all virtual this year online. We'll release more details about what these gentlemen will be doing soon, but it's get your early bird tickets now, because they're actually almost sold out, and then it's going to go to regular pricing. The conference is going to be very interactive, very intimate, with breakout rooms and demonstrations and stuff. Really cool conference, and we'll be releasing more details soon. So with that, gentlemen, thank you for joining on. We'll see you soon. And with that, I want to thank all of you out there for coming by. I'm just going to check the chat window, make sure I didn't leave any comment unturned. I see Bedside Rounds has been up in here talking about normal saline. But really everyone here is just echoing all the things we talked about. So to those of you who have been online, thanks for stopping by. We'll be doing more of these. And if you're just getting on late and you're like, darn it, I missed the first part, don't sweat it. This is all going to be on the live stream for replay later. So 6 o'clock, about an hour of this stuff. I'm so glad that you joined us for our second Ivy League, and we'll be doing more of this hopefully next week. We'll check the schedule, but stay tuned on social media and Critical Care Now, and we'll update you with more information. Folks, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm so grateful that you took time out of your day to hang out with us. And if you are following Critical Care Now, thank you for your support. And if you haven't checked out criticalcarenow.com, what are you waiting for? Tons of great content that's coming at you daily. Please enjoy. Be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.